Little girl refused to go to class because the teacher smelled like a refrigerator. A horrifying truth was revealed. No. No. I'm not going. I hate school. Lucy screamed, tears streaming down her face, her hands clutching the doorframe as if it were the only thing keeping her from an invisible nightmare. Lucy, you have to go to school. I can't stay home with you forever. Come on, put your coat on, Sylvia sighed, pulling her daughter into her arms and gently patting her back as she always did to comfort her. But today, the little body trembled violently, as if about to explode from fear. Mom, you don't understand. In there, the smell, Lucy stammered, her eyes wide with panic. The teacher smells like an old fridge, like dead fish. Sylvia froze. The word sounded bizarre, nonsensical, but her daughter's expression made her uneasy. Dead fish and old fridge? How could a 6-year-old even come up with such strange comparisons? What are you talking about, Lucy? Who do you mean? Mr. Adrian, Lucy whispered, as if afraid of being overheard. He's so cold, his smell makes me want to throw up. Sylvia was stunned. She had never heard that name before, but Lucy had only transferred to Oak Ridge Elementary School less than a month ago. How could her daughter be reacting this strongly after just a few weeks? 3 days later, things got worse. Lucy barely slept, often waking up in the middle of the night sobbing uncontrollably. She began showing signs of anxiety disorder, clinging to her mother, afraid of even the sound of the phone ringing. Sylvia, maybe she's just being clingy, said Rose, Sylvia's neighbor and close friend, while pouring coffee. Changing schools, new environment, every kid reacts to that. Don't you remember when Matthew had to move to Class 1B? This is different, Sylvia shook her head. Lucy cried when she started preschool, but never like this. She talks about the smell. And her teacher. Rose frowned. Smell? You mean like body odor? No, more like dead fish or an old fridge, Sylvia replied, her face filled with worry. That's weird, Rose muttered, raising an eyebrow. The next morning, Sylvia decided to do something that even she found irrational, take Lucy to school and stay there for a few hours to observe. You're Lucy's mother, a thin young teacher with neatly tied hair asked when Sylvia arrived at the office. I'm Teresa, the homeroom teacher for Class 1A. Yes. I was wondering if I could sit in the waiting room and observe the class from there. Lately, Lucy seems really scared of school, and I'm worried she might be getting bullied or dealing with some psychological issue. Teresa gave a faint smile. I don't think there's anything serious going on. Lucy is a sensitive little girl, a bit more delicate than the others. Sylvia held back a reaction. I understand. But I'd still like to observe today. Of course, Teresa nodded, though her eyes showed a flicker of impatience. Through the classroom's glass window, Sylvia saw Lucy sitting curled up at the back of the room, her eyes distant. The other children were laughing and playing, but Lucy didn't join in. Her gaze stayed fixed on the side door where, moments later, the man Lucy had referred to as Mr. Adrian appeared. Adrian wore a white shirt, black tie, and a slightly worn vest. His face showed no expression, his eyes empty. What chilled Sylvia wasn't his calm demeanor, it was the way he entered the room, no smile, no greeting, silent like a ghost. Good morning, class. His voice was raspy, lifeless. No one responded, just a few soft whispers. Sylvia turned to Teresa. That's Mr. Adrian, he teaches art and PE. He just transferred from Oregon, Teresa whispered. Quiet, but always punctual. He doesn't seem like he's good with kids, Sylvia remarked. Teresa didn't reply, only shrugged. PE class began, and Lucy reluctantly stood up with the others to go to the field. Sylvia asked to follow and stood at a distance. While the kids did exercises, Adrian silently walked around correcting them one by one. When he got to Lucy, Sylvia saw her recoil, shrinking away from his hand. He didn't scold her, just stepped back, nodded, and moved on. When class ended, Sylvia rushed to her daughter. Lucy's face was pale, her lips trembling. "Mom, please don't make me go to his class again." "Please," her voice cracked. "It was just PE, Lucy. What is it that scares you so much? He's not like a real person. He's cold like ice. And that smell. Mom, don't you smell it?" Sylvia said nothing. That evening, she knocked on the door of an old friend Julian, a college buddy from journalism school, now a freelance reporter specializing in education. A skinny guy with glasses, he lived alone in an apartment overflowing with books. "Long time no see, Sylvia. What's the emergency?" "Julian, I need your help. I think something's wrong at Lucy's school." "Another abusive teacher?" "No. It's weirder." Sylvia told him everything, even the part about the smell of dead fish. Julian listened intently, without interruption. "I think something bad is happening at that school. I have no proof, but my instincts, they're screaming at me." Julian nodded. "I have a few micro cameras battery-powered, can be hidden in the wall. I can install one in the PE supply room if you tell me where it is. It's behind the PE field, near the old chemistry lab. You can get in through the back gate. There's a guard, but if you come with me, it'll be fine. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., I'll go with you." That night, Lucy cried again in her sleep. She held her mother's hand tightly, muttering, "Don't leave me in the cold place. He hides something in the box, it stinks, it's cold, like death." Sylvia couldn't sleep. She held her daughter close, staring at the dark ceiling, her mind spinning. Am I just being paranoid? Or is a mother's instinct right? The next morning, Sylvia took Lucy to school as usual, but this time, she stayed. After pretending to leave, she returned and asked to speak with Teresa in private. The teacher's office was quiet, the ceiling fan spinning slowly, the faint smell of old coffee in the air. Sylvia sat across from Teresa, gripping a paper cup tightly. "Miss Teresa, I need to have a serious talk. About Lucy." Teresa nodded, flashing a polite smile. "I understand, Miss Sylvia. I've noticed Lucy seems a bit more sensitive than the others." "It's more than just sensitivity," Sylvia said slowly. "She's genuinely terrified. Every morning she screams and cries. At night, she's sleepless, panicked. And specifically, she's afraid of Mr. Adrian." Teresa's eyes froze for a second. "You said, afraid of Adrian?" "Yes. She says he smells like an old fridge and dead fish." Sylvia lowered her voice. "Don't you think there's something strange about that?" Teresa was silent, then gave a nervous laugh. "I think that's just a child's imagination. Adrian is quiet, maybe a little distant. But I've never seen him do anything inappropriate. Have you ever noticed Lucy vomiting after his classes?" Teresa looked slightly uncomfortable. "Well, I've heard about it once or twice. But maybe she didn't eat properly in the morning." "No. I've been paying attention. After every PE class, she's pale, exhausted. She even had a mild fever once." Sylvia pressed on. "Were you aware of that?" Teresa pursed her lips. "I don't think it's related to Adrian." Sylvia cut her off, her gaze sharp. "Or maybe you don't want to think about it." The air grew heavy. Teresa stood up and began rearranging papers on her desk. "I'll pay closer attention. But I hope you don't spread baseless accusations, especially in a school environment." Sylvia left the office feeling suffocated, like she'd been pushed back to square one. But then suddenly, a soft voice whispered behind her. "Ma'am." Sylvia turned to see a little girl with light brown curly hair, gripping her backpack strap tightly. She recognized her as Madeline, one of Lucy's classmates. "Do you want to say something?" Sylvia asked gently. Madeline glanced around, then leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Lucy cries a lot after PE class. I've seen her sitting behind the supply shed, really pale. I asked her why, and she just said, 'Don't let the teacher come close.'" Sylvia's throat tightened. "Did you ever see Mr. Adrian do anything to her?" Madeline shook her head. "No. But Lucy is really scared." Sylvia patted the girl's head. "You're very brave. Thank you for telling me." That afternoon, Sylvia stood in the hallway, waiting for Adrian to pass by. She didn't say anything, just quietly observed. He walked past, not greeting or looking at anyone. The chill that came off him made Sylvia's skin crawl. And then she noticed the smell. Beneath the cheap cologne was a pungent, damp stench like something decomposing. Not overpowering, but strong enough to twist her stomach. She stepped back, covering her mouth. Adrian had already disappeared down the corridor. "This can't be," Sylvia whispered. "This isn't just a child's imagination." That night, she called Julian, her voice urgent. "Julian, did you install the camera?" "Yes. It's in the upper right corner of the supply room. It should cover the whole entrance. We'll have footage by tonight." Sylvia hesitated. "Do you think I'm overreacting?" "No," Julian said firmly. "I've interviewed many school abuse cases. Most of the time, it starts because a parent sensed something was wrong. If not you, then who?" Lucy had another nightmare. She said the stinky box opened again. The next morning, Sylvia deliberately arrived early to check things out. On her way in, she accidentally saw Adrian walking toward the equipment shed. He was carrying a black sports bag that looked heavy. As he opened the door and went inside, Sylvia followed from a safe distance. She hid behind a wall. And then, that smell. Unmistakable. The stench of rotting meat, pungent and foul, mixed with chemicals and mold. She covered her nose, heart pounding. The door to the shed closed. Adrian was inside. Sylvia turned and walked away, too afraid to stay. But inside, she was certain, this wasn't paranoia. Something disgusting was being hidden in that black bag. That afternoon, she went to see the principal, Mr. Ernest Whitman. A middle-aged man, graying hair, deep voice, and a very formal demeanor. "Miss Sylvia, I understand your concern. But we can't violate a teacher's personal belongings without specific cause. Mr. Adrian brings a foul-smelling sports bag into the shed every morning. Don't you find that strange?" Ernest shook his head, slightly irritated. "You're overthinking this. Maybe he's bringing food or workout gear. Food that smells like a corpse." Sylvia nearly shouted. "You're being disruptive," Ernest said sternly. "I'm asking you to stop. If you continue spreading these accusations, I'll have to prohibit you from coming to the school during class hours." Sylvia stood, her eyes red. "Fine. But if anything happens to my child, you'll be held responsible." As she reached the school gate, Sylvia saw Julian sitting in his car, laptop on his lap. He looked up and signaled her. "We've got footage." Sylvia climbed in, her heart racing. The screen displayed a grainy video, but it was clear enough to show Adrian opening the shed door at night. He wore gloves and a mask. He placed the sports bag on the table. Unzipped it. Inside was a dark red, solid mass. Blood oozed out, dripping onto the floor. "Oh my God," Sylvia whispered. Adrian picked up the mass, sprayed it with cologne, and placed it in a small gray refrigerator in the corner of the shed. He closed the fridge door, washed his hands carefully, and left. Julian spoke slowly. "I've seen a lot, but this time, I don't even know what we're dealing with." Sylvia gasped, eyes still fixed on the screen. "We need to go to the police." The next morning, the sky over Colorado was gray, wind whistling through the trees on the school grounds like mournful wails. Sylvia stood outside the school gate, full of doubt, eyes locked on the side entrance leading to the shed area. She saw Adrian walking in, carrying the same black sports bag. Next to him was the elderly security guard Mr. Coleman, his face lined and his back slightly hunched. Adrian gave him a brief nod and disappeared behind the gym building. Sylvia approached Mr. Coleman, trying to smile. "Good morning, Mr. Coleman. Haven't seen you this early in a while." Coleman frowned slightly at her. His voice was low and gravelly. "You're bringing Lucy to school early today? Usually you two get here just before the bell." Sylvia looked around, lowered her voice. "Have you ever noticed what Mr. Adrian carries in that black bag?" Coleman frowned. "Not really my business. He's a private man, but he hasn't done anything wrong." "Don't you think that bag is really heavy?" "And it has a weird smell," Sylvia said cautiously, eyes alert. Coleman tilted his head, speaking quietly. "I have noticed a few times it smelled like spoiled food." But he said it was animal specimens for biology class. Sylvia was speechless. A gym teacher, teaching biology? Well, I wondered too. But he said he was passionate about anatomy. Who understands quiet types like that? Coleman shrugged. Sylvia didn't respond. That foul smell still lingered in her memory. If what Adrian said was true, it only made things more disturbing. That afternoon, Julian came to Sylvia's house. He brought a memory card and wore a tense expression. "I reviewed the footage from last night," he said as soon as he entered. "What's in that bag? It's not just animal meat." Sylvia poured coffee, her voice shaky. "What do you mean?" Julian set his laptop on the table and played the video. "Look closely at the chunk of meat, especially the upper edge." Sylvia leaned closer to the screen. She saw a dark red frozen mass, blood still dripping. But on the top right corner, there was something that looked like a fingernail. She jumped back. "Oh God. Nothing's confirmed," Julian said quickly. "It could be an animal ear, or even a fabricated model, but we can't ignore the worst-case scenario." "Call the police," Sylvia said firmly. "Not yet," Julian shook his head. "The police won't issue a search warrant based on a blurry video with no clear subject or evidence. We need more." Sylvia clenched her fists. "Then what do we do? Get clearer images. Or, catch him when he brings the bag to the shed again and get closer." "We can't wait any longer," Sylvia whispered. "Lucy's fading day by day." That night, Lucy had a high fever. She refused to eat, just lay under the blanket, eyes wide open, lips murmuring. "The box, it opened again. The stink is choking me." Sylvia sat by her side, tears falling freely. She wiped her daughter's forehead, whispering lullabies. Each word from Lucy was like a knife to the heart. "My love, I won't let that teacher scare you anymore. I promise." The next day, Sylvia brought Lucy to school late, saying she was sick and needed monitoring. She asked to let her rest in the nurse's office. Then she quietly headed toward the shed, where Julian was waiting in a rented van hidden behind a row of trees by the practice field. "Cameras ready. Adrian came early today with the bag. If we're lucky, we'll see clearly what's inside." Sylvia nodded, eyes fixed on the shed's entrance. Less than 10 minutes later, Adrian appeared. Still the same black bag, still that lifeless gait, his eyes empty. He opened the shed door and went inside. Recording now. On the laptop screen, the camera showed Adrian placing the bag on the table and unzipping it. This time, it contained an even larger mass, dark purple-red, covered by a thin cloth. He lifted the cloth. Sylvia held her breath. The chunk of flesh revealed pale skin with strands of white fur. Next to it was a piece of an ear, unmistakably feline. Julian whispered, "Animal. At least this time it's clear." "But the smell." They looked at each other. Sylvia gritted her teeth. "I don't care anymore. I'm going to the police today." That afternoon, Sylvia and Julian went to the local police station in western Colorado. They met with an officer named Robert Walker, a relatively young man with sharp eyes. "You have the video?" Robert asked after hearing the summary. Julian opened the laptop and played the latest clip. Robert watched intently, then shook his head. "To be honest, this is a tough case. Right now, what we see is just animal meat. Mr. Adrian bringing it to school doesn't break any laws." Sylvia snapped, "What about my daughter's words? The trauma? Her saying it smells like dead fish? Do you want to wait until there's an actual crime before you investigate?" Robert sighed. "I understand your concern. But legally, there's not enough to request a warrant yet. However," he paused, glancing at Julian, "I can request a background and medical record check on Mr. Adrian. If there's a history of mental illness or violence, that could be a starting point." Julian nodded. "Good. And if needed, I'll take this story to the press." Robert frowned. "Be careful. If this is a misunderstanding, you could ruin someone's reputation." Sylvia stood up. "If anyone's going to be ruined, it won't be me. It'll be him." That night, just after arriving home, Sylvia received a call from Robert. "Ms. Sylvia, I have some information. Mr. Adrian was in a serious accident 3 years ago in Oregon. A truck hit his motorcycle. He lost part of his left leg. He was on medical leave for over a year due to severe depression." Sylvia was stunned. "Lost part of his leg? But he walks completely normally now. We suspect he's using a prosthetic leg. What's disturbing is that there were rumors from Oregon Hospital that Adrian requested to keep the amputated part of his body. No official confirmation. But if true, that's seriously disturbed behavior." Sylvia felt a chill down her spine. Lucy's whispered words echoed in her mind. "Mom, the teacher hides the body in the cold box." The next 3 days, Sylvia lived in a nameless nightmare. She was torn between feeling like an overreactive mother and believing she was the only one who could see a lurking threat that no one else dared to confront. Lucy, on the other hand, grew quieter. She no longer resisted going to school in the morning, but her eyes were blank, hollow, devoid of the sparkle Sylvia had once cherished to the point of heartbreak. "She's being drained," Sylvia said to Julian, her voice thick with tears. "And I can't stop it. I'm worse than helpless." "No. You've done the right thing," Julian said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I sent the entire file to an old contact in the Unconventional Crimes Division. He said he'll assist." "We need more than persistence," Sylvia whispered. "We need the truth. And we need it now." That night, Julian returned to the school in secret. This time, he installed a night vision and audio-enabled camera, a device he had previously only used when investigating corruption in schools. The equipment shed sat motionless behind the sports field, like a lonely tomb in the dark. No one passed by at that hour except Adrian. At 1:16 a.m., the infrared image appeared on Julian's laptop screen. Both he and Sylvia stayed up, waiting. Adrian appeared, this time wearing a long coat and a low baseball cap. He walked slowly, as if floating. In his hand was the familiar black sports bag, larger than before. The shed door creaked open. He stepped inside. They held their breath. On the screen, Adrian opened the bag. This time, there was no frozen meat. No cloth covering. Instead, he pulled out a mass wrapped in metallic foil, like an insulated thermal bag. From inside, a dark liquid oozed, dripping onto the wooden floor. "Blood," Sylvia whispered. Julian zoomed in. And then they saw it. A tiny, shriveled arm like that of a newborn animal. It had fur. Claws. But the way it curled, bruised and withered, sent a wave of nausea through them. Adrian showed no emotion. He set the mass on the table, pulled out a bottle of cologne, the same scent Sylvia had smelled on him before, and sprayed it liberally onto the flesh. He tilted his head, inhaled deeply, then smiled. That smile like he was savoring the aroma of roses, or a gourmet dish. But in front of him was blood, rotting flesh. Adrian leaned down, opened a grey mini fridge tucked away in the corner of the shed, hidden beneath a cloth. A faint green light glowed from inside. He placed the gift inside, carefully, like storing a precious treasure. Then he stood still. Counting. 1, 2, 3. Then mumbled. That's enough. The scent, it's right. He closed the fridge, washed his hands with water from a plastic bottle, and stepped out of the frame. The video ended at 1:32 a.m. Sylvia buried her face in her hands, her entire body shaking. Julian sat frozen, his lips dry. I've seen dead rats. Dissected animals in labs. But this, he shook his head. This felt like a ritual. What do I do now? Sylvia choked out. I show this to the police. They'll think I'm more paranoid than ever. No, Julian said, pulling out a USB drive. We send this to Robert. And I'll also forward a copy to a child protection agency. A child living around a teacher who behaves like this, it's an urgent danger. Sylvia stared at the black screen. Do you think he might hurt Lucy? Julian was silent. Then said slowly. If someone can keep a corpse like a souvenir, there's no limit to what they might do. The next day, Sylvia kept Lucy home. She took her to a private clinic and saw a young psychologist named Camille Brown who had treated children traumatized by natural disasters. After over an hour of gentle tests and interviews, Camille stepped into the waiting area where Sylvia sat. Your daughter is showing signs of mild but persistent trauma. If left untreated, it could have long-term effects. She often talks about a bad smell, about a cold teacher. Camille nodded. Many children use sensory descriptions to express fear. The smell she mentions likely ties to a very negative real experience. Do you think Lucy's telling the truth? Camille looked Sylvia straight in the eye. I've never met a child who fabricated a fear with such consistency. If she were mine, I'd believe her. That afternoon, Sylvia got a call from Julian. Robert agreed to open an official investigation. They're applying for a warrant to search Adrian's home. He has a documented psychological history from the accident 3 years ago. And more importantly, Oregon Hospital confirmed on record that Adrian requested to keep the severed leg. Oh my God, Sylvia nearly dropped the phone. Julian continued, Robert's heading to his place tonight. Police want to keep it confidential, to prevent Adrian from destroying evidence or fleeing. Sylvia closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temple. The image of the fridge, and that deep red mass burned into her brain. Lucy walked out of her room, holding her stuffed bear. Her eyes were still vacant. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. I don't want Mr. Adrian walking past our house anymore. Every time he does, I smell the cold. Sylvia gripped her daughter's hand and held her close. I promise, you'll never have to smell that again. That night, while Sylvia and Lucy were fast asleep, Julian was still at his computer. He reopened the video, paused it on the frame where Adrian stood in front of the fridge, inhaling the scent of death like it was his personal paradise. Next to him, in the dim green light, something flickered. Julian zoomed in. A blurry shape, inside the fridge, beneath the packages of meat. A round object, that appeared to be the skull of a kitten. Mouth open, eyes bulging, tongue hanging out as if still terrified. Julian fell back in his chair, mouth dry as dust. He couldn't wait for the police to act. Something had to be done now. One day after the horrifying footage was sent to the Colorado Police Department, Sylvia received a call from Robert Walker near noon. "Ms. Sylvia, the search warrant for Adrian's house has been approved." Her heart clenched. "When?" "Tonight. The Special Investigations Unit will work with me. You and Mr. Julian don't need to be there. But I strongly urge you to keep your daughter safe away from anyone connected to Adrian, even other staff at the school." "You think there's a chance he might run?" "We're not sure. But people who request to keep parts of their body after surgery often fall into deep psychological disorders. And right now, we believe Adrian is in that category." Sylvia gripped the phone, voice cracking. "I always felt he wasn't normal." Robert replied firmly, "You were right." That afternoon, Sylvia didn't take Lucy to school. Instead, she drove her to Cedarville, their hometown where her mother lived with Aunt Grace. It was an old house with a quiet garden, about a 40-minute drive from the city. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Grace asked when she saw Sylvia holding her daughter, eyes weary and strained. "I need Lucy to stay here for a few days. Can you not ask questions?" Sylvia said, forcing a faint smile. Grace looked at her granddaughter, then sighed. "All right. But if you need anything, don't hide it from me. I'm not young enough to waste my worry." Lucy hugged the white cat named Speckles, the same one she used to play with every time she visited Grandma's. For the first time in days, Sylvia saw her daughter smile. A faint smile but real. That night, Robert, along with two plainclothes officers, approached the old apartment complex where Adrian rented a small unit. They had obtained a court-issued search warrant and brought a forensic pathologist along in case an on-site analysis was needed. When Robert knocked on the door, Adrian opened it after about 7 seconds. "Mr. Adrian Walker?" "Yes." His voice was hoarse, and his eyes were as hollow as Sylvia had described from the beginning. "We're criminal investigators. This is a search warrant regarding suspicion of illegal possession of restricted biological materials. We ask for your cooperation." Adrian frowned. Illegal materials? I haven't done anything wrong." "We'll determine that. Please step aside." Adrian looked at them, then quietly stepped back. No resistance. No surprise. As if he had been expecting it. The apartment was small, cluttered, but not filthy. The living room was filled with books, anatomical diagrams, sketches of animal limbs, and even some disturbing illustrations depicting the decomposition process of flesh. "Morbid aesthetics," one officer muttered. Robert didn't respond. He pushed open the bedroom door, where the yellowish light spilled over a white wall decorated with a map of the school. Right beneath the bed, just as Sylvia had once sensed, was a dark brown cloth cover. When they lifted it, the entire team held their breath. A mini refrigerator, old and dusty, was tucked underneath. But the outlet light was on. It was running. Robert put on gloves, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The first smell that wafted out was a mix of disinfectant and rotting meat. Freezing cold. Putrid. And, familiar from the footage they had reviewed. Inside were multiple frozen plastic bags, each sloppily labeled in black marker, March 2023, Chi, baby rabbit, December 2022, cat, lower half, and one unlabeled bag, the largest containing a grayish-purple block, rigid and brick-shaped. Robert turned to the forensic pathologist. "We need full analysis. As quickly as possible." "Yes," the doctor replied, his voice dry. The next morning, Sylvia received a simple text from Julian. "Fridge found. Evidence confirmed. Adrian is in custody." She gripped her phone as tears burst forth uncontrollably. Grace walked in from the kitchen and saw her daughter collapse into the chair, trembling. "Mom," Sylvia gasped. "I'm not crazy. I was right, all this time." Grace didn't say a word. She simply held her daughter tightly. She hadn't fully understood what had been going on, but now she did. Sylvia had just returned from a personal hell. Lucy ran in from the backyard, hugging her white cat, her face glowing. "Mom! Speckles had babies. 6 of them, they're tiny." Sylvia wiped her tears and knelt down to hug her daughter. For the first time in nearly a month, she was able to take a long, full breath. That afternoon, Robert called. "We've completed the DNA analysis of the items. The large block in the fridge was human thigh tissue. It matches medical records. Adrian's left leg, amputated after his 2022 accident." Sylvia was speechless. "You mean, he kept his severed leg, for 3 years?" "Yes. And not just kept it. He preserved it, sniffed it daily. Like a ritual." "What about the other samples?" "Mostly remains of small animals. Cats, rabbits, birds, even part of a puppy's skull." Sylvia was silent for a long time. "Did he do anything to children?" "No evidence so far. But we're reanalyzing the camera footage and checking his computer's hard drive. There are no current signs of abuse, but his obsession with smell and corpses is a massive red flag." She closed her eyes, a chill crawling down her spine. Robert's voice remained steady. "The initial forensic psychiatric assessment indicates Adrian suffers from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, coupled with somatic delusional disorder. He doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. When we arrested him, he just asked, 'Why won't you let me enjoy my scent in peace?'" That evening, Sylvia met Julian at an old coffee shop near their college campus, the same one they used to frequent as students. No one smiled, but their eyes were noticeably lighter. "You think I'll be okay?" Sylvia asked, meeting his gaze. Julian nodded. "It won't be easy. But you'll be okay. Because of you." She shook her head gently. "No. Because of my daughter. She was the first to sense something was wrong." Julian gave a faint smile. "Maybe we all need to start listening to children more. Instead of dismissing their fears as nonsense." "What are you planning to do next?" he asked. "Take Lucy to regular therapy. And I want the school to change. We can't allow people like Teresa to keep hiding things just to avoid conflict." Julian nodded. "I'm writing an in-depth exposé. Not just about Adrian, but the entire educational system that lets someone like him work around children." 3 days had passed since Adrian's arrest. The story began leaking first through anonymous posts on parenting forums, then small online news blogs started picking up a scent. The first headline Sylvia read on Thursday morning read, "Colorado elementary teacher suspected of keeping a corpse at home." It came with a blurry photo taken from a distance showing Adrian being led out of his apartment by police. His face was expressionless, as if he couldn't comprehend why the world was so noisy. Sylvia turned off her phone and sighed. Everything was spiraling beyond her control. And none of those articles knew the full truth that the corpse was his own severed leg. At the police department, Robert Walker sat across from the chief forensic doctor, a wiry-haired man named Mark Ellis. On the desk was the official report. "These are the test results from the mini fridge retrieved from Adrian Walker's apartment," Mark said, tapping the folder. "Let's see where to begin," he murmured. "There are 3 categories of items. 1. Small animal remains: rabbits, cats, mice, birds, all dead anywhere from a few months to 3 years. 2. A frozen piece of human tissue matching Adrian's DNA, his left leg, specifically from knee to ankle. And 3. Robert leaned forward. 3 are old incisions, very precise, with signs of antiseptic treatment. What's disturbing is that the human leg wasn't just kept, it was cared for." Robert frowned. "Cared for? Shaved? Cleaned? Sprayed with cologne? Wrapped tightly in layers of cloth and thermal bags? As if he preserved it like a companion." No one spoke for several seconds. Mark pulled out a close-up photograph. We also found a small test tube at the bottom of the fridge. Inside was a sample of brain tissue, source unknown. No medical records suggest Adrian ever had brain surgery, so it's likely animal. We'll send it to forensic biology for confirmation. Robert nodded. Psychologists are right. People obsessed with body odor often escalate to collecting actual body parts. On the fourth day since the arrest, the school officially released a statement. Mr. Adrian Walker has resigned from his teaching position at Oak Ridge Elementary School due to mental health reasons. The short, emotionless notice made no mention of what Sylvia, Julian, or any concerned parent was truly afraid of. Sylvia called Julian immediately after reading it. "Did you see that?" "I did. They're trying to bury everything. We can't let this pass like a gust of wind. I'm writing. But you know how it works without a public witness or someone inside the system confirming the story, it'll just be another fringe piece no one takes seriously." Sylvia gripped her phone. "Then I'll be that witness." At that same moment, inside the police station, Adrian Walker sat in the interrogation room. He had no lawyer. Made no request to remain silent. He simply sat there, staring at a fixed point on the wall. Robert entered, placing a small plastic container on the table. Inside was the metallic cloth that had once wrapped Adrian's leg. "You recognize this, don't you?" Adrian nodded. "I took care of it every week." "That was your leg?" "Yes." "Why did you keep it?" "Because it was part of me. It didn't deserve to die alone in an operating room." Robert looked at him closely. "You know that's prohibited, don't you?" "No one forbids me from smelling my memories." "Have you ever harmed a child?" Adrian looked up for the first time. His eyes blinked slowly. Then he shook his head. "I only love the cold. The silence. Children are too loud." Robert wrote that down. Inside, he felt a strange conflict: pity for a madman, and fury for the nightmare he had caused. That evening, Sylvia sat with Julian at their usual coffee shop. In front of them were a voice recorder, notes, and a list of key points. "Are you absolutely sure?" Julian asked. "After this article, your name will be public. The school might retaliate. And if Adrian has any defenders, they won't stay silent." "I'm sure," Sylvia replied. "Because if no one speaks up, this whole thing will be buried. Lucy won't be the last child to smell that scent if I stay quiet." Julian hit record. Sylvia took a deep breath and began from the beginning, from the first morning Lucy cried about not wanting to go to school, to the moment she first smelled the fridge scent on Adrian's coat. Every detail, clear and painful. When she recounted Lucy's words, "He smells like dead fish," her voice cracked. Julian stayed silent, writing non-stop. The next morning, the article appeared on the front page of a well-known digital news outlet. "A Mother Against Silence, Sylvia Smith's Battle and the Secret Behind the Fridge at Oak Ridge Elementary School." The story spread rapidly. Comments flooded in. Chills reading about the cold smell the child noticed. How did someone like that end up in a classroom? "I'm a teacher, and I'm ashamed the principal Teresa stayed silent." Support for Sylvia. Kids don't make up horrors like that. That afternoon, a group of parents gathered at the school gate holding banners. "No silence. No cover-up. Listen to my child, don't brush it off." Though Julian's article spread like wildfire, just 2 days later, the story was met with backlash. On a popular Colorado online forum, an anonymous post appeared. "Don't let a helicopter mom destroy someone's reputation, what you don't know about Sylvia Smith." The 2,000-word post listed numerous suspicions about Sylvia's motives: that she had a history of postpartum depression, that she was obsessive about controlling her daughter, that she used the media to fill personal voids. Sylvia read every word, eyes blurring. "They're saying I'm paranoid, Julian. That I made this all up for attention. Stay calm, Julian said, eyes fixed on the screen. I'm tracing the IP address of this post. I don't believe this is from a real parent. I do, Sylvia whispered. It's from someone inside the school. Someone trying to protect their job. Their image. That night, Sylvia received a text message from an unknown number. If you continue spreading false information, we will file a defamation lawsuit. This is your final warning. Office of Attorney representing Ms. Teresa Allen. Sylvia sat frozen. Teresa, the homeroom teacher who once said, "There's nothing unusual," was now the first to publicly defend Adrian. Meanwhile, in the media, the story began to shift. Major networks started reporting in neutral, even cold tones. According to initial police findings, teacher Adrian Walker shows no signs of student abuse. The materials found have been confirmed to belong to himself and animals. The matter is being exaggerated by certain personal blogs and isolated parents. Julian slammed his fist on the table when the report aired. They're flipping the narrative. Mainstream media won't touch this. And no evidence of abuse is now being used as proof of innocence. So, was I wrong? Sylvia asked, her voice hollow. No. You were the only one who believed in the truth while everyone else stayed silent. But truth alone isn't enough. We need more voices. The next day, Sylvia was called to the police station to complete her official statement. As she entered the waiting room, Robert Walker was on the phone. When he saw her, he quickly ended the call. Sylvia, there's something I want to tell you before you sign anything. What is it? Adrian has been transferred to the St. Mary's Psychiatric Institute for mandatory treatment. He won't be released for at least 2 years, based on the board's assessment. Sylvia exhaled deeply. So, it's over. Robert paused. Not entirely. There's still something unclear. What is it? Adrian's computer hard drive was decrypted. It contains hundreds of audio recordings. Most are just him muttering to himself in front of the fridge. But there's one file 17 minutes long titled "The Final Cold." Sylvia held her breath. Robert continued, "We listened to it. In it, he mentions Lucy." She froze. What did you say? Nothing direct. But at one point, he repeats over and over, "The little girl sees my smell. She smells everything. She's dangerous." Sylvia's knees buckled. Robert helped her into a seat. "We won't make that clip public. But I thought, you should know. Your daughter touched the darkest part of him." That night, Sylvia lay in bed holding Lucy as she slept. The little girl was more peaceful than usual, her mouth slightly open, hands wrapped around her teddy bear. But Sylvia couldn't sleep. In her mind, the whisper echoed, "She smells everything." That child her child had, by some strange intuition, awakened a monstrous machine. If Sylvia had dismissed Lucy's words that day like so many parents would have. If she had trusted Teresa. If she hadn't followed Adrian. Lucy could have been next. 2 days later, Sylvia received a formal letter from the Colorado Department of Education. The content was brief. Dear Ms. Sylvia Smith. In light of the incident involving teacher Adrian Walker, we respectfully invite you to attend a closed-door meeting with educational representatives and school psychology experts to discuss strategies for preventing psychiatric risks within academic environments. Date, April 15, 10 a.m., Hall C. Your presence will be of great significance. Sylvia arrived 30 minutes early. The large auditorium was filled with nearly 100 attendees, principals from regional schools, teachers, child psychologists, a few local officials, and reporters. She stepped up to the podium, heart pounding. Good morning. My name is Sylvia Smith. I'm the mother of a 6-year-old girl named Lucy, an indirect victim of something that should never have happened, if someone had simply listened to her from the start. The room was silent. I'm not here to retell the horror. Journalists have done that enough. I'm here to say this: a child should never need hidden cameras, investigative reporters, or criminal detectives, just to be believed when they say they're afraid. Scattered applause began to rise. Then it grew louder. Sylvia bowed her head. That afternoon, she received an internal email from the Colorado School Board. The message read: Ms. Teresa Allen has been officially reassigned due to failure to properly handle a student psychological crisis. At the same time, a team of school psychologists was brought into Oak Ridge Elementary School for regular intervention. They began interviewing students and training teachers on emotional sensitivity and psychological response. Julian called Sylvia that evening. See? Real changes are happening. Yeah. But it came at the price of a few months of hell, she replied, gently stroking Lucy's hair as the little girl sat coloring. And a lesson you had to learn at an incredibly high cost. That weekend, during a parent meeting, Lucy's new teacher Ms. Anna Moore invited the children to draw pictures expressing how they felt about their classroom. Lucy sat quietly for a long time before beginning to draw. A bright classroom bathed in sunlight, a smiling teacher, classmates playing on swings, birds singing outside the window. Under the picture, she wrote, "This classroom doesn't smell cold anymore." A week after the Education Board meeting in Colorado, the atmosphere at the elementary school where Lucy used to study had clearly shifted. There were no more whispers at the school gate, no more parents avoiding Sylvia like she was a troublemaker. On the contrary, every morning, a few of them came up to shake her hand, nod politely, or quietly say, "Thank you for staying strong." Sylvia didn't smile, but something in her eyes had been lifted. Like a thorn once buried deep under the skin so painful she had learned to live with it had finally been removed. An official notice from the Regional Department of Education was publicly posted. Teacher Adrian Walker has been placed in mandatory treatment at St. Mary's Psychiatric Center as ordered by the Criminal Psychological Review Board. Ms. Teresa Allen has been reassigned to internal administrative duties pending an investigation into her handling of student psychological welfare. Just a few short lines but proof of everything Sylvia had fought for over the past 3 months. At St. Mary's Psychiatric Institute, Adrian was under 24/7 surveillance in the high-risk behavioral ward. Each day, he was allowed out of his room for just 1 hour, under the supervision of 2 nurses. He didn't resist. Didn't scream. Didn't panic. He simply sat, motionless like a statue casting a shadow at noon. In his medical records, the attending psychiatrist noted, "The patient does not acknowledge any wrongdoing. He believes he is preserving his body memory, that the amputated leg represents a sacred symbol which must be maintained in the scent of death, to prevent forgetting past pain. The patient shows signs of acute reality distortion and scent fixation disorder. Social contact risk is considered high." Sylvia was contacted directly by Robert Walker and invited to the station for a private meeting. During their conversation, he placed a file copy on the table. "This is the final investigative report. All evidence has been verified. And most importantly, Lucy will not be involved in any legal or media proceedings." Sylvia exhaled deeply. "All I want is for her to forget. Even though I still can't." "You protected her the right way," Robert said. "And not many people can say they've done that." She looked at him. "I used to think I was weak." "Weakness is knowing your child is hurting and doing nothing. You crossed that line." He handed her another document. "Adrian's case is now being used as a reference model to develop scent-based psychopathy recognition tools in school psychology. A research group at Columbia University has requested access to the files for training purposes. You want my permission? Not just that. They want you to participate in an open seminar as a witness who intervened successfully before tragedy could happen." Sylvia hesitated. "I'm not a professional." "You're a mother. That's enough for them." A few days later, the psychological support team officially entered Oak Ridge Elementary. They brought surveys, light psychological evaluations, hosted sessions on nonverbal communication with students, and held private talks with each class. Lucy was invited to one of the open drawing sessions. At first, she sat quietly, not drawing anything. But when a psychologist named Maya sat beside her and whispered, "Draw anything you remember. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be yours," Lucy picked up a pencil. She drew a room. A fridge. A window. Outside the window was the sun. Maya asked, "What are you drawing?" Lucy replied softly, "The old room. But now there's sunlight." Maya smiled. "Very good. This drawing doesn't feel cold at all." Lucy bowed her head. "I'm not scared anymore. Mom says the man with the cold smell won't come back." That night, Sylvia sat on her balcony, looking out at the night sky. Julian arrived, carrying a large envelope. A letter from Columbia University. "They officially want you to speak at a seminar titled Maternal Intuition and Early Response to Psychological Distress in Education." Sylvia laughed. "That sounds like a master's thesis." "Because it's part of a pedagogy course," Julian replied. "And you're part of the curriculum now." She slowly opened the letter. Inside was a handwritten note from a professor named Isabel Reed. "I've taught child psychology for 15 years. But it was your daughter Lucy who reminded me that instinct and emotion can surpass any academic definition." Sylvia froze. For the first time since it all began, she cried not from fear or pain, but because she finally knew, her fight had not been in vain. On Monday morning, the school hosted a parent meeting to begin the new academic year. In the small auditorium, familiar faces sat quietly. Those who had once looked at Sylvia with doubt now showed hesitation, even remorse. The new principal, a middle-aged woman named Meredith Vaughn, stood to speak. "After everything that happened, we've realized how crucial it is to listen to even the smallest signals from our students. We were wrong to place blind trust in the system and forget the sensitivity, vitality, and vulnerability of our children." She paused, then continued. "Today, I'd like to invite a special parent, someone who taught us a lesson in perseverance and the power of listening to speak." Sylvia stood and stepped up to the wooden podium, her hands slightly trembling. "Hello everyone. I'm not great at public speaking. But I want to share this. One morning, my daughter, who was just 6 at the time, said something that changed my entire life. 'The teacher smells like an old fridge, like dead fish.' There were a few murmurs. But no one laughed. That day, I thought my child was making things up. But now I know it was the first cry for help." She lifted her head, her eyes steady. "And if I hadn't listened, I might have lost my daughter. Or worse, lost myself." At the end of the meeting, several parents came up to shake Sylvia's hand. The school now had a new room called the listening room. It was a place where any child could go to talk with a specialist, or simply sit, draw, read, or breathe. Inside the room, there was a small sign that read, "No feeling is irrational. No child is too sensitive." Sylvia sat for a while in the waiting area, listening to children laugh outside in the playground. A breeze passed, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden corner. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. A staff member approached, handing her a small envelope. "Your daughter sent this to you." Sylvia opened it. A new drawing. Not of a school. Not a classroom. But a heart. Inside the heart, there was a door. On the door, Lucy had written, "Mom was the first to believe me. I love you." That night, Sylvia wrote the final line in the notebook she had started the day Lucy first refused to go to school. "The greatest battle isn't against what's wrong but against doubting your own emotions. Lucy taught me that a child can sense death before an adult can even see it." This story stands as a profound reminder that children can sense danger instinctively, even when adults overlook it. The greatest lesson: listen to children with your heart, not just your logic. What sounds like a meaningless phrase from a child may be their first cry for help. And above all, a mother's intuition, perseverance, and the courage to speak out despite isolation can be the light that brings truth into the open.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.